Hey, good morning, guys, and thanks for coming. Being raised by working class parents in a small steel and automotive town outside of Cleveland, I was the youngest of three boys. Much like many of you, I was told things growing up, such as, don't talk to strangers, go to school, get good grades, right? Don't do drugs. Being a rebellious young man growing up, with some not so great mentors in my life, right? I'm sure you can understand how easy it was for me to stray into the darkness and often dangerous activities surrounding me. Finding myself often, on the pier of my hometown there in Lorraine, taking in the lake breeze, the sounds of the waves crashing the rocks, right? Or surrounded by large groups of people blaring music and dancing at parties. I fought a war often to not partake in the activities that everyone else was doing. Because I have to admit to you today, right, to all of you, uh, that I'm an addict, right? It's okay. Don't grasp on my account, right? See, I'm addicted to the first of my childhood directives, and I can't resist one talking to people. Two, I can't resist building trust with. I can neither confirm nor deny that some of that may or may not be true, right? But it is our abilities to sell people on what we say, right? That really grabs their attention and enables them to learn more about us, trust us, and ultimately buy whatever it is we're selling, right? Maybe it's just our stories, and sometimes it's our products. Maybe it's us for those people that are in transition, and regardless of who it might be, right? Whatever you're doing, whether you're in transition or you have a business or whatever else, right? The ability to present ideas in a persuasive way is a common core today, right? In the 21st century, we are a world of information. Google anything you want to, and you can gather information, right? But uh, we have to have the ability to present effectively for people to listen to what we're saying. And the craziness is we all have ideas. Raise your hand if at some point in your life you had a huge dream, right? Big things that you were going to do, the house you were going to live in, the car you were going to drive, the impact that you were going to have on society. And I would suspect, much like Steve Jobs, right? If Steve would have never come up with the idea of how to present the iPod or the iPad or the iPhone or all of those things combined into one thing, right, at one point or time, that if he would have never found a way to communicate it, it probably would have never came to be. Okay, so I think we all agree that effective communication is huge for us, and we all present in multiple different ways. Sometimes that's just a 60-second elevator pitch. Sometimes it's a 15 or 20-minute conversation that we have with people when we're talking about or talking about our products or our services or whatever it is. And so much of today's conversation, guys, is obviously going to be derived from your experiences and the things that you guys see valuable in conversations, but it's also going to be kind of founded on a book that was written by Carmine Gallo, that is Talk Like Ted, right? Talk Like Ted. And in the book, right, Carmine talks about that every conversation or every presentation or speech or whatever should have three things involved with it. It should be emotion, right? It should have emotion. It should be novel, and it should be memorable. And we're going to explore the 9 things that Carmine talks about in that thing, right? And so that brings this, but emotion is that thing, right? I mean, we are all in selling modes at some point, and we all know that people buy on emotion, right? And or they make decisions, I should say, on emotion, right? But they assure what they've done with the logic, right? With the numbers and the data and all that kind of stuff, right? And so it's got to contain most of that. And if you want somebody to remember you for being you, right, for being the person that talked them into the investment or the policy or the computer product or whatever it might have been that we're talking about, or the leadership program, right, then you also have to be memorable, right? They've got to make sure that when you got to make sure that when they walk away, they're like, I'm never going to forget that Andy guy, right? I'm just not. And and you know at that point that there's a connection there, right? And so the 9 things, and let's look at these real quick, and I want to delve in these. Feel free to unmute because I want to have a conversation around these kind of individually, right? And we can always look at all 9 of them together, but I want to talk about these, right? Number 1.
Rodney, I don't know
Yes.
if anybody else is having this problem, but your screen looks kind of funny here. It doesn't, it's not, anybody else have that problem, or is it me?
No, mine looks fine.
Okay.
Mine looks fine.
Yeah.
Okay, everything is like too big and I'm only seeing part of it. That's not it. Okay.
It's you. It's an issue, not an issue. Me.
Yes. Issue. So it might be your screen resolution or something to that effect that's making that happen. But yeah, I've got a whole slide on the screen. And I think everybody else has the same thing. So unleash the master within, right? And the first thing he talks about is that everything that we, if you want to be persuasive, right, that there has to be passion involved. So I don't want to go through all of these yet. I want to just start with the one, right? Unleash the master. Somebody unmute. Speak up for yourself as far as where do you think this falls in? How important is it, right? And how can people effectively unleash the master within themselves? Nobody?
I think just speaking on a human level, just speak to people as people, you know, instead of having an end goal of persuading them of anything, speak to them like a person.
I think you gotta,
we're just people and we have situations, and if you're willing to step in and help and present a solution to a problem, then they're going to listen to you.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Andy.
well, I think you gotta feel the passion, right? I mean, we've all listened to speakers and we could tell even if they weren't super articulate, but it was, you could say from the heart, it was something they were excited about. It just comes through. Whereas if it's not something they're really excited about, it comes like they're, even if technically they're doing a good job with good grammar, good pacing, and keeping the filler words out, it still just kind of comes across as sort of dead. So I think the challenge, if you're talking about a topic, is find some aspect of that topic that you're excited about and focus on that part.
Yeah, Carmine, I was listening to a couple audios this week in preparing for today, guys, and Carmine was given a lecture to some organization, obviously that he had probably been paid to speak at or whatever, but he goes in to talk about, you know, persuasion, or I'm sorry, passion is something more than just being interested, right? And something that's much more than just being excited, right? If you're not you're not ready to jump through a wall for whatever it is you're getting ready to talk about, right? Then you're probably not passionate about it. Right, and you got to think of it as more than that level of just, I'm excited about this. This is exciting. What is it? I mean, what are you willing to take the biggest hit of your life for, right? And there's going to be people when you're passionate about something that are going to talk bad about it, right? I think, you know, Laura, myself, I mean, Tim's in the financial industry. Some of you guys are retired financial individuals, right? Probably one of the biggest industries that take a hit from people that don't believe, don't trust, don't whatever it is, right? But you cannot let stuff like that, right, stop you from being passionate about what you believe in, right? And so it's got to be that next level of right? I mean, that gets you and grabs you and lights the fire in whatever it is you have. So, perfect, perfect. So the next thing that I'm gonna, did anybody screenshot all those things? Because I can sit here and talk about them without having to pull the slides back up. I want to keep us all in conversation. Number 2 was tell 3 stories. Stimulate the brain, right? Tell 3 stories. Why are stories so important, right? And what is it that we as humans find more intrigue behind a story as opposed to the facts? Right? I mean,
I don't know the answer to that, Rodney, but you are absolutely spot on. I think about everything from college lectures to church sermons. And if you asked me what it was about last week and it was just a lecture or lecture style, I don't know. But if there was a story in that, I'll probably remember this story about the kid that crashed his car and whatever, right? I don't know. I don't think I'm unique in that. I've started to notice that all the really good speakers of any ilk, they're telling stories. All the lesson is wrapped into a story somehow. Somehow, all the little details you have to get are ornaments on a bigger story. And a really good story has multiple layers to it that you have to kind of unwrap in your own mind, which
but
makes you
ultimately,
think about it later.
hold on, we're talking over each other. Hold on. No, Joe, go ahead. Were you saying something?
Yeah, to piggyback on what Andy said, my pastor a few weeks ago had a story about when he was a little boy growing up in Ireland, that his older brother put a penny in a light socket, and he said, touch that and see what happens. And it's like he put it in, and he went, drew his hand back real quick, and his brother's like, did that hurt at all? He says, no. He says, why don't you try it? And the brother tried it, and it was like, so like that's the story that you remember. And then he went into the rest of his sermon about, and he was kind of saying like how the apostles listened to Jesus, but they didn't understand him, or they didn't understand some of the things he was telling them about. And it's just, sometimes, it's like, and he actually got around to talking about, like Thomas putting his hand in the side and experiencing it that way. And it's just, but it's the story that you remember.
Stories make the concept personalized and relatable.
Mm-hmm.
There may be a deeper genetic basis for all of this, because historically, storytellers were revered. You think of epic poetry back in the early days of through the creation of repeated literature. Our brains may just be designed for connecting information in narrative form and retaining information in certain types of structures, and story is one of those. They just work because we're made that way. We learn and remember through narrative. We tell ourselves our own stories over and over again.
Yeah, I think one of the longest forms of communication, right, is storytelling. When you look back to cavemen and stuff like that, right, drawing their histories out on side of the walls and stuff like that. I think it goes like that. I mean, and today we've got a different vehicle, right, to communicate those things, because we have things like the English language and all those other things, right, that we can use. And I think our ability to tell a story today sometimes gets diluted because we've got all these tools like PowerPoint, right, as well as the individual. And listen, I'm one that never been officially diagnosed ADHD or whatever, right? But Lamar's probably in this same situation right as he shuts his camera off. He's like, I gotta shut my camera off. I can't listen to this. But if people have a PowerPoint on and they're speaking, and we're in this mode here, meaning Zoom, it's a lot easier for me to stay focused on both aspects because everything's all collected in this one little square that's a foot by 2 feet or whatever, right? As opposed to if I'm in a live audience and I've got a speaker on the stage and I've got PowerPoints up above me, right? I get lost because I'm trying to stay focused on what words are on the screen and I'm not hearing what's being said, and it almost gets diluted because the message gets lost, right? Because there's too many things that are distracting from the true message that's being sent. Does that make sense? Whereas if we are on Zoom, it does become easier. You know, Lamar's a good one. He's like, do you guys have, you know, make sure we get PowerPoints, make sure we get something that's visual, because not everybody is just an audible learner, right? They are a visual learner. And I think we can often dilute the message in a smaller form too, like this, because we take a picture that could probably speak the words that we wanted to say, and then we put a bunch of text inside of it, and we get lost, right? And so this goes back to the original conversation too, right? That Laura said, we got to humanize this, right? We got to relate this to people, and telling stories does just that, right? It allows Sanford or Rick or whoever is listening to what's being said really to think back to their days growing up, and did they sit by the pier, or were they doing things, and then and stuff. So you gotta, that's how it gets to grabbing people. Number 3 is practice relentlessly. We're not going to spend a whole bunch of time on this, but it is about internalization, right? And so I want to share something here real quick. Tim and I, man, it was probably 5 years ago, brother. I can't even remember when we went to the boot camp, right? And part of this boot camp that we went to, it's a sales boot camp, right? Was about internalizing scripts and sales presentations and stuff like that, because the more you can internalize it, right, the more natural it becomes in a conversation piece versus you feeling like you're scripted and saying something, right? And so I think presentations are the same way. And I wish I could have memorized that whole script this morning when I was telling you, when I opened up the room this morning, right? Because I think it would have came across a little bit better. But it is that, right? So internalization, and the only way you're going to internalize it is practice, drill, rehearse, practice, drill, rehearse it, practice, drill, rehearse it, right? And encourage yourself to jump on a Zoom call and record yourself, or just a video call and record yourself, right? And listen to yourself so you can give yourself feedback. So,
Lonnie, could you put the slides back on so we can?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry if you. Give me a second here. I'll get the right screen shared. So there we go. So that was number 3. Practice relentlessly to internalize, right? Number 4, teach your audience something new and inspire. Right? I think one of the things beyond the stories to make it memorable, right? As soon as you tell them something that maybe they had not heard of, or it helps them create a different vision for the future, right? Now all of a sudden your audience is engaged at another level that you probably wouldn't have if you didn't inspire them to envision something for themselves as well. So how have you guys utilized a lesson or teaching or whatever? I mean, Andy, you kind of do this from a leadership perspective when you're teaching leadership in your courses.
Right. So how do I teach something new?
Well, yeah, I mean, often people come into a leadership course, right, who have already kind of led people, but how do we make sure the concepts are what we're trying to get them to walk away with, right? Feel like it is new so that they can be like, yes, this is what I'm.
So, yeah, so I challenge them to find those aha moments for them, because it's going to be different. You're getting all these people from different backgrounds in, and some of them, and I remember the first time I took the course, I was like, yeah, I've been doing this for 40 years. I still found nuggets in there that I hadn't heard before. And how often is that true? You know, Joe, you were talking about a message you heard at your church. If you've been sitting in church for 40 years, you've probably heard all those Bible stories before. And yet there's always that nugget in there. And so what I challenge people to do is find those nuggets in there. And, one of the tools I give them to help that is a little journal. And I tell you, when that aha moment crosses your mind, you need to write that down. And that nugget might not come from me. I tend to do these in a seminar with about 12 people, about this size here. That nugget, I might be facilitating, but I'm not doing all the talking. In fact, I'm trying to get others telling their stories. And so Sanford might get a nugget from a story that Laura tells about how she approached a problem that she was having. And so a lot of times it's that getting everybody involved, so you get a lot of different viewpoints showing up there, which you can do in a small group. Doesn't work in a TED Talk nearly as much, which is a lot more of a one-to-many kind of thing.
And I mean, ironically, like on TED Talks, right? I mean, that there's an audience out there that these folks are speaking to. But man, I gotta be honest. Like, I pull up a TED Talk and I literally feel like that person is like talking to me.
Right?
Especially, I mean, if I'm watching it on YouTube, right? I mean, I feel like this is me and her, me or that person, right, or whatever, whoever's up there. That's what I feel. And I think that's their genuineness about how they're coming across in their conversation, right, and stuff. So, perfect, man, perfect. Anybody else to talk about inspiration and how we teach something new?
I find that when I'm talking or working with job seekers, teaching them, sometimes it's not something new, but teaching them how to maximize the benefit of using LinkedIn as a resource and the importance of using it, how to search it, and then showing them concrete examples. I love it when the aha light goes on. I'm going to use Annie's words, but I love it when the aha light goes on.
Yeah, so I got a question I have is, if you're teaching something new, right? Let's say your topic is I don't know. I mean, we're talking public speaking here, right? If your topic is public speaking, right? Is it okay to have a lesson or something taught that is outside the realm of the main topic? Like networking, right? It's kind of tertiary to public speaking, but
I'm not sure I understand your question, Rodney.
so, I mean, often they get into these conversations, whether it be a TED Talk or a presentation or whatever, right? I mean, your topic might be, I mean, today we're talking really kind of public speaking and how we can better present ourselves, right? But if a lesson within, I mean, we're not lecturing, obviously, we're having conversations here, but if the lesson within a lecture, right, or a presentation is about speaking in public or communicating, right, and using more of a tertiary lesson to teach something new, like the LinkedIn perspective, right? We always look at communication or public speaking as being in front of people or whatever else, whereas this communication technique is just as important, right, in creating conversations when you're in LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever else. Are you following me? Am I not clear? Maybe I'm not.
Are you saying in a presentation, is it okay to digress into a secondary topic or secondary lesson, or are you asking in conversation, is it okay? Because clearly conversation is fine.
In a presentation, right? I mean, is it okay to use like a tertiary a lesson, right? Something that maybe is trivial, but is going to bring value to the group in understanding how what you're talking about as a whole could relate to something else.
It totally is going to depend on the group.
And are you talking about going off on a tangent unintentionally or without plan, or are you talking about you're planning to dig into one specific application within this broader context?
No, I think it would have to be intentional. Yeah, I mean, it would have to be intentional.
Ronnie, let me see if I can give an example for you. I have taught computer classes over 200 times to approximately 10 to 20 people. And normally I do not use a microphone when I'm teaching a class of that size because they're in a confined area. But I do not like using a microphone if I have to speak to a group. Is that what you mean by kind of
Yes. Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I mean, it's so. I don't know. I'll come back to that. If I can clarify that question, I'll come back to it. We'll come back to it. But let's keep moving on here, right? So number 5, right? Deliver jaw dropping moments, right? And again, Carmine goes through and he talks about the 3 things that you can do, right? Joy, fear, shock somebody. So I have to ask the question, right? How effective was my jaw dropping conversation of, hey, I'm an addict?
That was pretty effective.
Did any of you go, what? You know, and I think you have to have that moment, right? It brings in their attention, and some of them may even go, man, I know other addicts or whatever else, and then it kind of releases the tension a little bit as well, and it almost takes number 6 into account, the fact that we can joke around the fact about, and Andy, you even laughed at it, right, when I said, and all you guys thought I was addicted to getting good grades, right? And it was just a giggle moment, right? And so I think these 2 things, right, creating that shock and awe almost, or overwhelming joyous moment, right, that allows people to go, yes, I'm part of this, right? And then even make a little bit of fun about it, about how maybe they excited they got, or how they just got kind of duped into thinking something differently than what they thought, or whatever it might have been. And so I think these 2 things, right, these 2 tools that you have when you're speaking to people are really probably the 2 most valuable tools that are there to help keep engagement along the way. Thoughts?
The story my pastor told definitely had shock in it. So
yes.
And it used humor without telling a joke. He probably didn't think it was funny at the time, but looking back 50 years, he thinks it's funny now.
Exactly. And often we can laugh at each other about stuff like that, right back, and it humanizes it, because we've all done stupid stuff, right? If you haven't done stupid stuff, you haven't lived yet, okay? We all got to do some stupid things, I think, in order to learn lessons and continue to grow and do good things. Anybody else? Go ahead, Sanford. Yeah.
I do it on a daily basis. Even when I walk out the door, regardless, like I was with my companion and we went to the hospital there, and since I have a little hard time walking at times, this young guy was reeling me, okay, down the hallway, and I just shared a little bit of my rap because I figured I touched the younger generation. And I blew him away. I made his day. I mean, he does that going on how many times? He said maybe 30, 40 times in the hall walking. Is a very, how we say, not the best job, but it's just, he's there. And I thought, well, I made his day. I mean, in that moment, you see. So I do that if I go to a drugstore. I was buying a veteran's hat, a cap, and a young black lady there was, I just shared a little touch of my little rap and that, and she got so into it that there was a line up beside, to the other guy taking the sale and all that, but she was so elated that you make people's days. Like I'll say a little thank you or hello, or just being kind to people as you pass by. So because we're all how they caught up in this world of negativity, and the jobs that are out there is demanding. So if you could share a little light, a little moment to someone along the way, I think that's key. You have to be proactive, but you have to get out that radiance and that vibration to where the frequency, because we're all connected. If all people are connected, so I think this in a group or anything, just sharing what yourself. You look at yourself and who I am and what you're best doing and how you can make a difference. You make a difference every day you're out there, every time you meet someone, and I think that's key. And you keep that feeling, that moment, and that energy. You be creative. You think, oh, who really am I? You're caught up with all these different jobs, but maybe not really what you're within your heart is what you want to be. And I think when you start to take a step back, because we're all living in a fast-paced world, and how we keep a sanity and and our health. And that's key to your health is the stress factor, being around stressful situations. So you have to get out, release it somehow, if it's a hobby or passion. And I think that's how we grow. We grow within ourselves, within our heart. And you say,
Yep.
talk to your heart, you feel it goes into your brain, and I think that's where it comes from. It's like,
So everything that he's talking about, everything that Sanford's talking about, and that we discussed, right, is really all this stuff is scientifically proven that that emotional stimulus that you have when something hits you, like we're all sitting here, and I can only imagine, like, if Andy was doing one of his leadership webinars or whatever, and one of his students was like, "Hey, I got something for you real quick," and he starts rapping, right? First of all, Andy's not going to ever forget it, right? and I think it's the same thing for all of us, right? That if we're in that moment and all of a sudden we have something that surprises us, we've got that the what they call emotionally competent stimulus, right? That kind of stays with us and gives us that all moment that we're never going to let that time go, and we're probably going to remember a lot of things surrounding that, right? And so,
May I give you a short example, Rodney?
yes.
I was calling to make a reservation at a restaurant. I mentioned we were bringing 5 people. The person at the other end said, "Now, will you need any high chairs or wheelchairs?" And I said, "Well, not for another 10 years." And she said, "Oh, you'll need a high chair in 10 years?" And I started laughing so much, I remembered it, and I will always go back to that restaurant.
No, but I'm going to need a wheelchair. I would have asked for the wheelchair just to leave the place. Hey, once I get done eating, then you can wheel me out to my car, okay? Absolutely. So let's keep rolling on this, guys, because I got a couple exercises I want us to do, right? Stick to the 18-minute rule. Stick to 18 minutes. Listen, 18 minutes is long enough that it gives you more than enough time to present any facts and as well tell the stories that are along the way, right? But it's also short enough that allows people to stay engaged, right? I remember going through this process that when we first started Coffee Connect, and we had other speakers that would come in. I mean, a lot of you spoke here previously, right? And one of the first questions they would always ask me was like, "Well, how much time do I have to speak?" And I think they were looking at, hey, we're here for an hour, right? That they've got 55 minutes. And I would say, well, you got maybe about 20 minutes, right? We do like about a 10-minute session. We go to breakout rooms for 10 minutes. We go to a 10-minute session and we do breakout rooms. And so you really only have about 20 minutes to deliver, maybe 25 minutes to deliver whatever message it is. And so the Carmine goes in his audio that I was listening to, and he was saying, hey, anything beyond 10 minutes, you have to start to understand you're going to start to lose people, right? 10 minutes, and you've got to find a way to reel them back in, whether that be with number 5 or number 6 or a story to allow them to continue to relate or bring back into relation, right? But anything more than 10 minutes on a topic, and you're going to start to lose people, right? And anything above 18 minutes, he said you will lose probably about 90% of your people at that point. And so you want to keep the conversations to as short as possible, right? And so favor pictures over text. I've already talked about this earlier, that we can often put a lot of text in our pictures, and then all of a sudden we're at a loss because people are trying to stay focused on what's on the slide, what's not on the slide, what is he saying, what is she saying, and all of those things. And then the last thing, this really goes full circle right back around to what Laura started us out with, right? We want to humanize this and talk to people. And I think it's important that whenever you're talking to folks, right, that you stay in your lane, you're open, you're authentic, right? And often we can find ourselves vulnerable, right? If I came into today's conversation and I opened up the room with talking about how I was an addict, right? One, if I wanted you to believe it, I had to have some kind of an emotion behind that at the beginning, and hopefully that did come across, right? And in order to bring the audience into what I was saying. And so you've got to be open, you've got to be authentic, and then vulnerable at the same time. So this is what I want you guys to do. We've got 9 things here. I want you to write 1 through 9 on your pieces of paper, and I want you to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, how polished do you think you are in these areas? 10 being obviously the best, and 1 meaning that you need a lot of work on some of this, right? So just rate yourself 1 through 10. And I was going to put polls together, but I didn't get a chance to put the polls together, so we'll figure this out here in a second.
Okay. Mhm.
Ronnie, you're sharing presenter mode, it looks like.
Oh, I forgot to go back to the screen. Sorry, guys. There we go. Thank you.
Did we average these scores?
No, just do your individual ones, and then I want you to find out. So figure out what your top 3 were. Like, what are the 3 things that you're the best at? And then I want you to figure out what are the 3 things that you feel like you need the most work on. The 3 things you're best at, the 3 things that you need the most work on. In fact, okay, somebody can screenshot that if they want to or whatever. Right? What factors are you great at? What do you feel like you need the most improvement on? And then we're going to go to breakouts, guys, and share.
Real quick, would you go back to the previous screen?
Sorry. Oh, I sure can. I'm sorry.
Take a picture.
Take a picture. Right.
That's what our phones are for.
What are the 3 things we feel like we're great at? What are the 3 things that we need the most work on? And as a group, when you go to your breakout rooms, right? What advice can we give each other to help each other in the areas that we need improvement on? We'll come back. We're going to discuss kind of where the group is on these things. Because out of these 9 things, there may be a whole separate other topic that we can bring into play later on at some other time. I know we've already talked about storytelling. I think Rick gave us we did storytelling a while back. Wasn't that you, Rick?
I can't recall.
Greg did one. Who did the one about the music? Connect. That was Greg.
That was Greg. Yep, that was Greg.
That's a long time ago, wasn't it?
Oh, it might.
And,
yeah.
and you remember it, right? Because
Yeah.
it was something that could relate to your everyday life, but something I was passionate about, right? So
I actually just watched that video again the other day. I actually just watched that video the other day again.
and you realize I wrote that in 30 minutes and never practiced once because I was passionate about it and I believed it, and it's just.
All right, so if everyone's got their ratings, there's the screenshot of the question. I'm going to stop sharing. Trying to get ready for this last piece. Okay, so of the 9 things, well, we lost a couple people here. Of the 9 things that we have, right, I'm just going to go down through the numbers and raise your hand if it's a weakness of yours. We're not going to go with the strengths right now. We just want to talk weaknesses. And so number 1, who had number 1 as a weakness? Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. Number 6. Number 7. Number 8. Number 9. Okay, so I did that just so I can see where we feel like our biggest areas are as a group. And so number 3, number 5, number 8 seem to be, I'd say the winners, but they're really the losers at this point, right? Because we're having some issues with them. So 3 being practicing relentlessly. And I think all of us talked about this, right? In our group, where I said, I think you can feel like, okay, I can over prepare or I can ill prepare. I go back to the life license, and Tim's like, hey, if you score more than a 70, you over study, right? Because that's the passing score was a 70, right? And I think often when we're going through things, we feel like we can over prepare for a presentation or a conversation that we're going to have with someone. But we also have to understand that the more we do prepare, the more we practice that, right, the better it's going to come off. Number 5, deliver those jaw-dropping moments. And I think 5 closely relates to number 2, guys. We all got stories to tell in our life, right? And I think if we can find some way to throw a wrench in what that story is, right? Just like I did at the beginning when I said, listen, I'm addicted, and you guys were automatically thinking the worst case scenario, right? When I said, listen, I'm just addicted to meeting people and having relationships and talking to folks, right? And doing the one thing that my parents told me don't do. Don't talk to strangers, right? That's what I'm addicted to. And if you can be addicted to something, you should do it with something that's going to bring you joy, right? And definitely bring you value in your future. So find ways to have those stories, and we've all seen those moments of here's 2 statements. Which one do you think is true? And I think we can all find a way to put one of those not so true statements into our conversation, and then kind of revert that back around to really what the story is going to share. Number 8 being favor pictures over text. And I think this is just something we all got to get in practice of, especially if we're doing PowerPoint presentations. And the more we're going to be in front of groups of people, right, that we've got to slim down on the words and help create more of a vision or a picture of what we're trying to say. So people stay in tune to what we are actually saying versus the words that are on a screen. Okay. So any saving remarks from all of you? Nothing? All right.
This book has been on my want to read list for a long while. I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
Well, the good news is I just found out this morning it's in audio too.
I do know that. I probably have downloaded it. I just haven't gotten to it.
I know exactly what audiobook I will be downloading next.
Because
I haven't read the book.
What's next?
This one.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, okay.
I haven't read the book. No, I haven't read the book. All I've done is some research on it and stuff, because I brought up this topic and I was like, oh, I should have read the book long before I presented the topic. Absolutely, man. But it's all good. So listen, in his talks, right, Carmine also talks about kind of the makeup of somebody receiving a message, right? And he takes it all the way back to Greek mythology, right? And pathos, ethos, and logos, the fact that 65% of our message is being received emotionally, 25% is being received logically, right, with whatever stats or numbers that we present, and 10% of it is our business stature or our credibility or the association that we have with the topic, right? And so make sure you focus your efforts on the right thing, right? And I think the passion and all of that is way more important, right, than sometimes talking about all the accolades of the business or whatever else you might have achieved, right? What's wrong, Jeff? You got
there's no aspect here that it says whether the message is actually true.
There isn't. Listen, so that's a great point. How many people do we come across today? They have one point of argument, you have another, right? And sometimes it's not based on facts or anything else like that. That's just based on what they've heard and what they've been programmed to understand and know, right? That's what's sad, dude. Right? Sanford, are you trying to say something? You're muted.
Sanford, you're muted. Jeff, I would think ethos would come in with
No.
the credibility. I think that would come in with being truthful, but
So
that's
I'm going to wrap up with this, right? You guys all have stories to tell, right? So please go tell them, because if you don't, somebody else will. Humor has a way of letting us know that maybe that crazy idea that you had, right, isn't just so crazy, right? So tell a joke, laugh, right, when you look in the mirror, and let that giggle fuel and inspire you, right? If you're going to be addicted to something, I just said this, right? Be addicted to something that will only bring you more joy, more friends, and a peace of mind that you made a difference in the world. Go out there, have a great week, everybody. We've got a great topic next week as we're going to be talking. Whoops, why did it not come up? There we go. Aren't we all in transition, right? Why constant change should be intentional, right? Why constant change and growth should be intentional for everyone that's out there. Hope you guys had a great week this week. Enjoyed the conversations with everyone, and we go out there and kill it for all of us, whatever we're doing in our business and in our lives, right?
Rodney, can you make the slides available to us?
Oh, I sure can. Yeah, I sure can. You want me to email it to you?
That'd be great. Yeah.
Me too.
Yep.
Thank you, Rodney. This was great.
Thank you for making us think so early in the morning.